Okay, hi everyone. Imogen and I are back for a little chat, and seeing as though we are now into December, we thought we would have a little discussion all about planning, motivating ourselves ready for January, but using December as a time to start kind of thinking about that so that you're ready to go back into whatever kind of training, exercise, healthy nutrition as well, any kind of healthy living type goals that you might have as New Year's resolutions, or just something that you want to fresh start with when it comes to January. So we thought we'd have a little chat all about our experiences and what we tend to do to perhaps give a few top tips and to perhaps motivate people to start thinking about their game plan, as it were, for December going into January. So welcome, Imogen.
Hello.
We do different types of things. There's different things that we're interested in, so we're gonna kind of talk over those a little bit. So when you're thinking about kind of whether it's kind of new goals, New Year's resolutions, or just wanting to be a bit more motivated going into the new year, what kind of things are you thinking about? How do you plan it out? And any kind of top tips you can give?
Yeah. So for me, like mine's generally for like training and stuff is running. That's my sort of thing that I do. So mine's generally based around that side of stuff. There is exercise classes that I do as well alongside, but the main bit is running. So going sort of like my plans usually going forward into the new year is usually looking ahead to if there's any events that I want to do, or if I've been littered with injuries over the last one, so it's usually probably focusing and getting back to where I wanted to be. But it's those types of goals usually will be set. I normally set in January, or sort of look at doing sort of then. So for me, December tends to either be a case of prepping for sort of like that picking up in the new year, or it's a case of actually just trying to maintain and just give myself a bit of recovery time and rest up if I've been
Yeah.
pushing this side of Christmas. So generally what I will end up doing sort of like is either make the plan of what it sort of the training I want to look like come the new year, and sort of work out whatever the stages are and steps are to get to whatever the goal is. And then December for me, for training side of things, generally tends to be a bit more of a kind of like I take the sort of like pressure off. So mainly because I know that I probably won't run as much as I normally do during this month, just because weather, there's other bits and pieces and stuff. And actually I tend to find that I also get quite tired. So energy levels just generally aren't there. So it's not boding for the sort of like intense training.
Yeah.
So usually for sort of things of the set structuring of sessions and stuff, I've tried different tactics over the years of which works, and it seems to be get based on what my mood feels going into December as to what tends to work best. Generally, I will do shorter. I tend to do shorter sessions, but probably a little bit more intense. So for running and stuff, I probably will focus more on pace rather than distance. I'm not usually pushing distance now. It's normally like a lot more sort of like smaller runs, maybe like a mile or so a couple of miles and stuff, but I tend to go for speed if I do that side of stuff. Last year I took a different approach. Last year I actually tried to just focus on distance and only do maybe like one session. So I did less frequent sessions but longer distance, whereas normally I try and do more frequent but shorter. But I also take the pressure off in terms of the number of sessions that I do. So I don't normally plan as many to get done in a week either. Partly just to take like so that there is that space for recovery and proper recovery so I can down tools, and partly so that I've got flexibility to move around depending on bits and pieces that might come up, or like I say, weather dependent stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then one of the things I definitely always plan in is I will take a good sort of 10 days, sometimes maybe even 2 weeks, completely off. and I do it so that I don't feel guilty. And I do find that usually by the time I get to that period, because it's usually over the Christmas period and that sort of Christmas week and stuff, that I will do this. Normally I will want to go for a run and need to get some air and want to do some exercise. So usually I will do something. But I don't plan it because I like to have that option of just being like, it's okay, I'm not training, I've got my plan in place, I planned for the fact that I'm not doing this. And I like to see it as a way of just kind of completely sort of letting my body rest and recover, and maybe go for walks and stuff or do something else and things, but just have that time away of being like, actually I am just resting and recharging, and using that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I do and find works for me. But yeah, I very much view December as recovery.
Yeah, and I think, I think a lot of people do. There's so much going on in December, isn't there? You've got so much to think about, not only with kind of maybe work, kind of children, if you've got them, and families with lots of things going on around Christmas time that you've got to organise, obviously all your Christmas shopping. There is a lot to kind of think about, and it can be a time where you're busy, and that is, you just got to accept that. And like you said, sometimes it's important just to say, just accept that fact that, even if you've got a kind of regular training plan, that you're not necessarily going to stick to it, but be kind to yourself and say, just have to accept that in the December period. But I think also it's a great time for reflection on how the rest of the year has gone, in terms of what your goals were, whether that's kind of exercise goals, nutrition goals, other healthy lifestyle goals. Maybe it's kind of trying to get more sleep, or trying to reduce your stress and do a bit more mindfulness activities. So it's a great time to kind of reassess and start thinking about what your new year goals will be, and start to maybe put really tiny little nuggets of that in place once you've decided what that might be. So for example, if you are someone who wants to get into something in particular, whether it's exercise wise, or you want to make some nutrition changes, for example, you want to get more sleep, it's about maybe just picking one or two little things to kind of start trialing out in small amounts, so that it's perfectly manageable with this busy period, but actually it gives you a taster for what you definitely want to do, what changes you want to make. Because obviously one of the biggest hurdles, or things which people kind of come across in January, is that they go all guns blazing on a new kind of goal plan, and can be quite extreme with it, because they think, right, I'm really motivated at the beginning of the year, but they haven't tested anything out, they haven't really thought about the impact on their lifestyle in January. It can be just as busy,
Yeah.
and they will then kind of fall at the first hurdle, after a few weeks, a bit like, you see people kind of joining the gym, and then it'll be really busy in the gym for like the whole of January, and then by the time we get to kind of week 4 or week 5, obviously it kind of drops off a cliff a little bit, because people have kind of either lost their motivation because they went a bit too hard too soon, and didn't kind of build up to a new regime or routine that has to still fit in with their lifestyle, in the long term, obviously not just in the short term. But they can't perhaps manage the level that they are perhaps training with, whether that's, as I say, kind of, it could be gym based, or it could be going out running, or whatever it might be that you've decided to do. Same with nutrition as well. It could be that, right, you say, right, I'm totally going to change my diet, I'm going to go for it. It's absolute classic time for someone to just totally upturn what they eat and try a new diet, and it lasts for a relatively short period of time, and it's not maintainable. So it's really important, I think, to test these things out and start putting a few little, as I say, kind of nuggets of things in place, whether that's, right, I'm going to just go to the gym once a week, and I'm going to go for 20 minutes only, and I'm just going to test out some of the machines, or I'm going to try a free weights exercise. Or if it was like, right, I'm going to get into running, maybe it's like, right, I'm going to just start going on a few short jogs. Maybe again, I might start once per week, and I'm going to set a goal, I'm just going to jog up to my local shop, and then I'm going to jog back again. I'm going to see how that feels as a run in itself, rather than thinking when you get to January, right, I'm going to put a running plan in place, I'm going to run every other day, I'm going to run this distance, and you don't know how it really feels and how it fits in with your lifestyle until obviously you start doing it. And then we can become very demotivated when in January we try this new plan, we go all guns blazing, and actually it's really difficult. Habits take a long time to actually put in place, and as I always say, one of my biggest things with clients, whether it is when we're talking about exercise, or whether we're talking about nutritional changes, is that it has to be sustainable, it has to be
Mm.
maintainable, it has to fit in with your lifestyle, and that is why it has to be quite individualized. You can't just always go out and follow a generic plan of some kind, whether that's a generic meal plan or an exercise plan. You know, you have to tailor it to your life, it has to fit in, and that actually can be quite time consuming to start thinking about. So to get that right for yourself, so it's going to work and be sustainable in the long term when come January, I think it's a really, really good idea in December to start thinking about all your goals.
Yeah, it's like you say, isn't it? It's the test running of being like, right, well, like, does it work if I do it on this day at this time? Does it work if I do it like this? Does this work if I start? Or even like you say with the nutrition stuff, it might be just finding some recipes and seeing whether like you can source the ingredients, how long it takes to
Yeah,
cook, because you might have all these like grand plans to cook like meals from scratch, and follow all these recipes that are really healthy. But if it's going to take a couple of hours in a busy week, you're probably not necessarily, for me anyway,
yeah.
not going to do it.
Yeah,
Like you're
absolutely. And
putting
it's,
in the
you
work.
know, I'm all about that as well, thinking about convenience, you know, although I know I'm a kind of registered nutritionist and it is my thing, I do really have to think about my time that I've got, things that I do use which are going to be more convenient at different times when I know that January is going to be just as busy for me as it is across December. So yeah, planning ahead just a little bit can make all the difference, you know. And
Mm.
again, if you're someone, if we're thinking about people joining gyms again as an example, you know, do it. It's better to do it in December if possible, because then you can go in, you can scope out the equipment. If you're quite a beginner or you haven't been for a long time and you're just rejoining, and you don't really know what you're doing, it gives you that opportunity literally just to pop in. As I say, it could be 20 minutes, really get to know what it is that you like doing, what you want to do, what you then want to focus on, because you know what's available there to you. And how busy it is at different times, so that when you actually do go back in January, where it is going to be kind of super busy, at least you kind of have got a plan, you know what you're doing, you're not wandering around aimlessly kind of looking for something to do, you know, or struggling to get on different bits of equipment and thinking, well, I've got to stick to this exact plan. At least you kind of got options then if you kind of scoped things out beforehand. And you know,
Mm.
preparation is key in all different aspects when you're trying to make habit changes, particularly if you want them to kind of stick in the long term, rather than just being something that you do for the first couple of months of the year and then, you know, don't continue it. So I think it's really good to have a plan and also think about a mixture of what are my ultimate long-term goals. So what do I want to achieve, and what kind of time scale am I giving myself? What, you know, what is more short term, so what can I literally start doing right now to start putting a few of those little habits in place in preparation? And then in the medium term, you know, how am I going to monitor kind of my progress, and think about that as a plan a little bit as well? Because when you have set goals, your mindset can be, you know, you can really organize yourself, and you can kind of have the right mindset going into it from the beginning, because you know exactly what you want to achieve. You know, lots of people will go into these situations and think, right, well, I just want to lose weight, or they'll put like a, you know, I want to lose several stone or kilograms, whatever it might be, or I want to be able to run this distance, you know, I want to be able to do this event or whatever. But you need to kind of break them down into small little chunks, so that it is totally manageable and you can build up over time, and not, as I say, get to January and go all guns blazing and try and do everything all at once, particularly if you have more than one health goal. So again, if it was
Mm.
changing nutrition as well as exercise, or, you know, as I say, adding in some of those other healthier options to our lifestyle, like kind of getting more sleep, and things like that. Again, with things like getting more sleep, you could start doing that now. Literally, you know, go to bed 5 minutes sooner than you would normally do, and start really small, and you can kind of build that up over time. But all that being said, I know what you kind of mentioned about having time off as well, and I think that's really important, not to put too much pressure on yourself to, you know, achieve massive goals either straight away or even over the Christmas period. So like, you know, for me, I love training every day, but I know I won't be able to go and train on Christmas Day and Boxing Day and things like that. But I think it's really nice to say to yourself, you know, yes, this, this is this period of time, but it's a really short period of time. I'm allowing myself to kind of just take time off, even if you don't want to. Someone like me, I would happily train every day. But I know that rest is highly important. Rest, sleep, de-stressing, bringing your nervous system down by having that kind of total break from the norm as well. Being out of routine, it's a bit like going on holiday, isn't it? It really does just a total kind of change of whether it's change of actual scenery or just normal routine, and just saying, no, this is just a day where I don't have to do anything, and I'm just giving my body total rest, and I know overall that I will benefit from that in the long term.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Is that I find if you do it and you can do it like without the guilt and stuff of being like, oh, and stuff, I find when you go back, you do see that it hasn't made that big a deal, and because you've planned it, you have the plan to kind of pick up where you left off, so it's not the same. But then I also find that then if like talking it to like injuries and stuff, that if you do have to take time of where you're like, actually I do have to step away from my training for a bit because this has happened, that it's not necessarily felt as such a big deal at the time,
Yeah.
because you're like, okay, well, I've taken time off and now it's just my body's way of saying I need some recovery time. That's no different than you sitting down of going, I need some recovery time because I want to focus on these things that are happening. It's essentially a very similar type of thing, of just the trigger for it is different, but it then means it should hopefully then give you that sort of confidence to be like, right, okay, well, I have to take the time away because injury has come up, but it gives you then that time to be like, right, well, now I know that the sort of you've automatically kind of got your plan in place. You just might need to tweak it depending what's happened for how you return, because you've already done it when you actively took the time away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually you've touched on something extra, which I think is perhaps important to mention, is those who have sustained injury just before Christmas, for example. And perhaps, I have some clients who might be going through a rehabilitation plan with me back to exercise. And obviously we won't necessarily be able to get all the sessions in the time that we wanted to, perhaps before Christmas and that period between Christmas and New Year. But again, it's remembering that it's not going to massively hamper your progress, and actually the rest time will be good for injuries. You can still keep moving. There's still, obviously, do talk to, if you're going through an injury program with somebody, whether it's a physio, someone like yourself, or me on the kind of rebuilding strength side of things, talk to that person, get the top tips, make sure that you are clear on what you can do in between times and how you can keep things, whether it's a joint, muscles, keep them mobile. There's so much that you can kind of do at home, and just doing simple things like, rather than thinking about, obviously, well, I can't go out for a run, or I can't do this particular exercise, if you need particular equipment that you can't get hold of yourself, just if you're able to, just going out for walks. And this is great for everybody, isn't it? Just kind of staying active rather than thinking I've got to run, I've got to train, I've got to rehab this injury. Doing what you can, just staying mobile, keeping active, not sitting down for massive periods of time, making sure that yes, you're getting the rest and you're enjoying obviously your Christmas, but you can just kind of do very small little things, little and often, which is going to really just keep you ticking over, so you don't have to worry about it too much.
Or it's even like if people don't want to go out for the walk, so they do want to like do the hibernation mode and stuff. Like it's even things like we talked about obviously last week with the self massage, or just a little stretching. You can stretch and do some stretching on the settee if people are wanting to. Like you don't even. It is those little bits, isn't it, that you can do,
It
that will all
is.
be those nuggets of things that will help sort of build upon for when you do return to normal routines.
Absolutely. And I think that applies to anybody. I can't tell you, the number of conversations that I have, with people who are, whether it's struggling to get motivated to do kind of regular exercise, or whether they're, again, being rehabbed from an injury, or they're just not sure where to start. It's start off small, just little movements, diversity of movement. Don't just sit in the same position the whole time. Don't kind of move around your home perhaps in the same way. Sit on the floor, floor, sit on different bits of furniture, sit in different ways, carry your posture in a variety of different ways, rather than always sitting in exactly the same way if you have to sit for long periods of time. And like you say, kind of use any other period of time to do some stretches, whether that's standing, whether it's in your bed when you wake up in the morning or when you go to bed at night. You know, utilize furniture that you've got around the home and little nuggets of time just to kind of think, right, let's just move the body in some way. Let's just kind of keep it fluid, keep it mobile, stretch things out, make sure things aren't kind of really kind of tightening because I'm sitting in the same position for a very long period of time, and just do what feels good. You know, even if you don't know prescriptive exercises or stretches, just move in a way that makes you think, oh yeah, that felt good, just squeezing those muscles. It's like that absolute classic. I'm sitting here kind of leaning forwards myself a little bit, whereas I can feel everything tightening up behind me, and I just want to go like this. I just want to squeeze those shoulder blades together, do that little release. Maybe you might do a few kind of shoulder rolls on each side, squeeze everything in a way where I haven't been moving my body in that particular direction for a good while now, and just kind of release things a little bit. And I already feel just a little bit better just having that tiny bit of that release there. So it's little things like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just stretch and move in different ways, and do what kind of feels good to you, really.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay, well, hopefully we've given people a little bit of a motivation to start, even if it's just start thinking a tiny little bit about, you know, any new goals for January, what they might like to achieve. Even if it's something really small, it's worth thinking about, planning a little bit where you can, even if you're just writing it down on a little notepad or on your phone, just a few ideas. You don't have to think, right, this is my plan now. It's just get your ideas together, start thinking about it. Who might be there to help you think about accountability in terms of, you know, anyone else that might support you with this? Maybe talk to those people about it, or think about organising it if that's what you need. And just start, getting kind of prepped and ready for a few changes, because as we said, habit changes, if we want them to last, do take a long time to actually put in place and to stick to, at least kind of minimum kind of 30 days for any one small tiny little habit change. So if you've got something big that you want to achieve, obviously you want to be kind of thinking about making tiny little steps towards that, as soon as you can. Okay. Yeah. Right, lovely to have another chat. I can't believe it's December already and we're talking about Christmas. But we'll have a few more little videos to come before we actually get there. And again, maybe we'll kind of extend on some of these things we've talked about today. Okay, yeah. Right, thanks for joining me, Imogen. See you soon.
Bye. See you later. Bye.